My name is Nancy. At the time, I was 33 years old, living in Denver, Colorado, and running a small company specializing in investing in and renovating old houses. I started from scratch, with no parents backing me, no one pulling strings for me. What I have today is the result of 10 years of working through holidays, weekends, and sometimes even without sleep. I'm not the showy type, but I'm proud that I was able to buy a penthouse overlooking the Rockies without signing a joint loan with anyone. I met Julian at a real estate seminar in San Diego. He walked into the auditorium with a kind of arrogant confidence that made people either curious or annoyed. I fell into the curious group. Julian wasn't just good-looking and charming, he was incredibly persuasive. He knew how to make a woman feel like she was the center of the universe, and even though I recognized the tactic, I still felt a bit unsteady. Julian introduced himself as someone investing in sustainable urban development projects, regularly traveling between New York, Houston, and Los Angeles. He never said outright that he was wealthy, but the way he drove a Porsche 911, wore a Patek Philippe watch, and casually mentioned a ski trip in Aspen made it impossible not to draw conclusions. I dated Julian for about a year before we got engaged. At the time, I thought I was lucky to have found a partner with similar goals, vision, and willingness to share. But what surprised me was how secretive he was about his family. Every time I asked, he'd just give a faint smile and say, "You'll see, they're a different world." And they truly were a different world. The first time I met Julian's parents was at a cocktail party at their mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. The house exuded old-world pride, with ancestral portraits framed in gold lining the hallways, like silent overseers tracking every guest's movement. His mother, Patricia, was the type of woman whose eyes scanned you from head to toe before she allowed a smile. She wore an olive green Chanel dress, pearls, and even held her wine glass like it was part of some ancient ritual. She shook my hand and said, "Oh, you must be Nancy. How interesting that Julian chose such an independent girl." It sounded like a compliment, but I clearly sensed the thin layer of disdain beneath it. His father, Charles, was a tall, quiet man whose gaze seemed to assess your worth by the second. He didn't ask me anything about feelings, love, or my future with Julian. Instead, he asked about the average return rate on each property I invested in and seemed genuinely pleased when I answered smoothly. "At least you've got a business mind," he muttered. I kept smiling, but something about it all felt off. They didn't ask whether I loved Julian or if I was happy. To them, life seemed like a series of calculations. And I, apparently, was part of some larger financial equation. Julian stayed by my side, his hand gently on my back whenever the atmosphere felt stifling. He smiled, joked, tried to keep things light. I told myself it was just the first meeting. Things would change once they got to know me better. But I was wrong. Seemingly harmless remarks like, "It's good Julian found a woman who knows how to manage money," or "It's not easy entering a family with this kind of tradition," became more frequent. I'm not easily shaken, but I couldn't deny that I started to feel like I was being seen as a tool, a pawn they could maneuver to serve some deeper agenda. I didn't realize then that this was just the beginning, and that family, with all its noble, orderly, and wealthy facade, was hiding schemes I could never have imagined. 2 years after the wedding, one early fall afternoon, Julian suddenly told me that his parents wanted us to come to the Newport, Rhode Island estate to discuss the family's future. Even though I was used to their formalities, there was something odd in Julian's tone that day. He wouldn't meet my eyes for long, just brushed the topic aside as if it were a casual event, then quickly changed the subject. We made the trip to Newport the following weekend. The mansion stood by the sea, built of gray stone, looking more somber than grand. Inside were the usual expensive furnishings, ancestral portraits looking down from the walls as if whispering things I didn't want to hear. Patricia, my mother-in-law, welcomed us with her usual cold smile. She instructed the staff to serve dinner in the glass garden room, where you could watch the sunset dip below the ocean. But the beauty did nothing to calm my growing unease. We ate the appetizer in silence, broken only by the soft clinking of silverware on porcelain and the distant sound of waves. Charles, my father-in-law finally spoke when the main course was served. He set down his knife and fork, pushed his chair back slightly, and pulled out a thick stack of papers from the briefcase beside him. Nancy, he said, in a steady tone like he was giving a presentation, our family is entering a new phase. To ensure financial stability and unity, we've prepared a small document. I looked at Julian, hoping to see a shared glance or at least a hint of surprise, but no. He smiled, tilted his head toward me slightly, and said softly, "It's just a formality, sweetheart. We're a family after all." I looked back at the document. On the cover, the Holloway Family Asset Trust Agreement. I opened to the first page. Just a glance at the opening lines was enough to understand the nature of this formality. I would be transferring all of my assets, my personal investment portfolio, 3 rental homes, retirement fund, and savings accounts into a trust managed by senior family members. And, of course, as the person creating the trust, me, I would have no authority to withdraw funds, sell assets, or intervene in any activities of the trust without written approval from the family board. "Are you kidding me?" I asked, my voice dropping low. Julian kept his gentle smile. "I know it sounds serious, but really, it's just a way to unify our finances. My parents are doing this to protect the family assets. You trust me, right?" "Trust?" I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I turned to Patricia. She was watching me like a predator, waiting for its prey to step into the trap. "And what if I don't sign?" I asked, placing the contract back on the table. Patricia tilted her head, sipped her wine, then replied, "Oh, nothing really. It's just, it would be such a shame if someone didn't understand the meaning of family commitment." I smiled faintly. Family commitment or asset control? The air at the table turned heavy. Julian frowned. Charles sighed, his hand still resting on the documents. "Nancy," he said, "you're a smart woman. This is a chance for us to build a strong financial legacy. Julian's family is about tradition. Trust is the foundation." Then, I picked up the contract and flipped through a few pages. Why are there no clauses in here to protect me? No lines allowing me to withdraw funds if needed. No voting rights. No authority to sell assets. Just an obligation to transfer everything and sit back while your family runs the show? Julian quickly chimed in, his voice noticeably lower. "You're overreacting. It's really nothing. They just want to protect you. Trust me." I looked him straight in the eyes. "If it's for me, then why am I the one losing all control?" Julian went silent, 1 second, 2 seconds. Then he shrugged like he was tired of explaining. "Nancy, you're overcomplicating it. It's just paperwork." I placed the contract back on the table, lifted my chin, and smiled. "Well then, you won't mind if I let my lawyer take a look at it, right?" Patricia froze. Charles furrowed his brow. Julian, for the first time, lost his composure. Just then, the back door of the garden room opened. A woman with brown hair, dressed in a gray suit, walked in with a confident stride. She placed her document bag on the table and nodded to everyone. "Sorry for interrupting dinner," she said. "I'm Claire Preston, legal representative for Ms. Nancy." Petra glared. "This is a family matter. There's no need to involve outsiders." Claire didn't react. She simply opened her folder, pulled out a contract identical to the one I had just been given, and began to speak with a sharp, professional tone. "After reviewing the full content of this agreement, I can confirm that this is a blatant financial manipulation document. Not only does it demand the transfer of my client's entire personal assets, but it also completely strips her of any legal control over her own property." I saw Patricia's hand tighten into a fist. Charles frowned but remained silent. Claire continued, "This contract offers no protection for Nancy's interests. On the contrary, it places her in a completely passive position, unable to withdraw funds, object to decisions, or access financial information without written consent from her in-laws. This isn't asset consolidation. This is appropriation." "That's enough," Charles spoke, his voice deep and heavy. No one here is trying to harm Nancy. You're overinterpreting, Claire responded calmly. Then why is the contract structured so that she loses all control over her assets, while the other side gains full authority? If this is a family matter, then why was it kept from her until the very last minute? Julian tried to jump in. Claire, I think we can talk privately. This isn't— No, I cut him off. We're going to talk, right here, in front of everyone. No more just a formality or trust me. I've trusted you for 2 years, and this— I tapped the contract— is what I get in return. Patricia regained her usual soft tone, though it sounded strained this time. Nancy, dear, we just want to protect you. Money can be dangerous, and there are risks you can't always foresee. I laughed, but there was no joy in it. Funny, I've faced risks my entire life to build everything from scratch. And now my in-laws, who haven't contributed a dime, are asking me to hand over everything in the name of protection? Julian stood in silence. No more justifications, no more gentle smiles. I looked at Claire. I'm not signing anything, and if they keep pushing, I'm prepared to take this to court as a case of asset interference and abuse of marital power. Claire nodded. I'll start preparing a case to protect your rights, and from this point forward, I suggest that all financial contact from your husband's family be made in writing and in the presence of legal counsel. I stood, gathering my bag. Thanks for dinner. I think I've had enough family warmth to last me the whole year. Patricia said nothing. Charles remained silent. Julian sat motionless like a statue. I turned and walked out of the glass garden room, hearing Claire's steady footsteps behind me. On the way to the car, Claire spoke softly. You handled that very well, but I don't think this is over. I looked straight at the wrought iron gate opening before us, a faint smile on my lips. I don't think so either. They picked the wrong person to mess with. I left the Holloway estate that night feeling not just betrayed, but as if I had just escaped a trap 2 years in the making. On the drive back, Claire stayed silent, occasionally glancing at me through the rearview mirror, as if checking to see if I was still composed. I didn't say a word. Inside me, one part still trembled with fury, but another had switched on, the part that had helped me build an entire business from nothing. Cold, precise analysis. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in front of my laptop, pulling up every financial statement, every bank transaction I had once overlooked, thinking, married couples shouldn't keep score. But now, everything was suspicious. I found a few odd transactions from a secondary account. One Julian had asked me to open with him, for our joint investment plan. I hadn't paid attention at the time. I trusted my husband. Trusted that he was educated, calculated, and would never betray the one person who stood by him when the world still barely knew his name. The next morning, I called Claire. I need a private investigator, I said bluntly. Someone really good. Claire didn't ask why. She simply replied, I know someone. I'll reach out today. That afternoon, I met Adam. A man in his 40s, quiet, sharp, with the kind of look that had seen too many dark corners of the world. I gave him everything I had on Julian. Bank accounts, emails, phone numbers, even small details like travel patterns, frequent locations, and names he often mentioned socially. I want to know everything, I said. Debts, assets, outside relationships, and if there are any loans taken out under my name, I want proof. Adam nodded, no extra words. I'll get started. Don't expect results immediately, but when I find something, I'll let you know. 3 days later, Adam called. His tone hadn't changed, but there was something in his voice that made my blood run cold. You might want to be sitting down when you read the report I just sent, he said. I opened the PDF file the moment we hung up, and as I skimmed through the first few pages, I understood why he gave that warning. Julian Holloway, my husband, the man who sat beside me each night, kissed my forehead and said everything will be fine, was drowning in debt. Not just a few credit cards or failed real estate loans. It was a long list of personal debts, failed investments, and, worst of all, a $120,000 business loan taken out in my name, filed through a shell company he quietly created. I had no idea. No signature of mine was on file, but somehow, he had made it happen. I called Adam immediately. That loan, my voice cracked. Are you sure the signature is forged? There are signs of Photoshop and unauthorized use of personal data, he confirmed. I have someone digging deeper, but that's not the worst part. I froze. What's worse than this? Adam exhaled lightly on the line. He's living a double life, Nancy. At least 2 other women. One in Chicago, one in Miami. I'm just getting started, but both of them think they're the only one. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What are their names? Lisa Hartley, high school teacher, 31. They've been dating for almost 2 years. And Hannah Reeves? Gallery assistant, 27. According to the data I found, he's engaged to Hannah. The wedding is scheduled in 6 weeks. I stood still for a long moment. My mind was spinning with memories. Julian's sudden business trips, the unanswered messages at night, and that ring I once found in a drawer. Thinking it was for me, before he quickly hid it, saying it was for his cousin in Florida. It was all a lie. A perfectly crafted act. I need to meet both of them, I said. My voice no longer shook. It was sharp as a blade. Adam was silent for a moment, then replied, I'll arrange it. That night, I sat by the apartment window, watching the city lights. I thought about Lisa, possibly waiting for a date that would never happen. I thought about Hannah, planning a wedding, completely unaware she was about to marry someone else's husband. And I thought about myself, the woman who had shared a bed with a con artist for 2 years and never knew. Julian had calculated every move, but maybe he misjudged one thing. I don't fall easily. And I never let someone else get hurt the way I was, without doing something about it. I set down my glass of water, eyes cold as steel. The game had only just begun. I met Hannah at a small cafe in Brooklyn, where the soft amber lighting and mellow jazz music helped soften the weight of silence. When she walked in, I recognized her instantly. Not because I had seen her photo in the detective's report, but because of her eyes. Bright with trust, happiness, and the nervous excitement of someone about to get married. Hannah didn't recognize me right away, but when I placed my wedding ring on the table, silently, without explanation, she froze. I watched her whole world collapse in a single blink. What is this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm Julian Holloway's wife, I replied slowly. And I'm afraid you're not the first woman he's promised a future to. Tears streamed down her face. Not sobbing, but the kind of tears that come with sudden, chilling clarity. Hannah told me everything. From the day Julian showed up at the gallery with a huge bouquet, to his story about an inheritance on the way that just required them to marry on time. I signed a power of attorney for him to withdraw my savings, she whispered. He said it was temporary, just to prove financial standing to the probate court. I held her hand. He took out a loan of over $100,000 in my name without me knowing. And now, I think we have a chance to do something. Not just to get justice, but to end this chain of deception. We spent the next 3 days planning. Claire met with my attorney, handled the legal side. Adam, the private investigator, gathered more evidence. Bank accounts, forged signatures, and documents Julian had sent to Lisa. The third woman in his web of lies. Julian suspected nothing. He was still texting Hannah daily about tablecloth colors, guest lists, and the upcoming Meet the Parents dinner in Manhattan, an event arranged at a luxury restaurant by the Holloway family. That would be the last night Julian thought he was in control. I arrived at the restaurant ahead of time, along with Claire and Hannah. Everything was meticulously prepared. Copies of documents, photos, recordings, and 2 identical wedding rings placed side by side in a black velvet box. When Julian walked in, his arm around Hannah's waist, his face lit up. But when he saw me sitting there in the middle of that elegant room, his smile froze. You, he stammered, eyes darting from me to Hannah and back again. "Nancy, why are you—" "Long time no see, darling husband," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. Charles and Patricia were there too, and the moment they grasped what was happening, the atmosphere shifted. Patricia jumped up. "What is this? This is a family dinner, not a stage show." "No," I said, my eyes locked on Julian. "This is the last dinner you'll perform at without getting caught." Claire stepped forward, opening her bag and pulling out a stack of documents. "If I may present a few findings," she said. "First, Julian Holloway took out a $120,000 loan under the name of Nancy Holloway, his legal wife, without her consent or verified signature. This constitutes forgery and unauthorized use of personal information." Patricia's breath caught. Charles scowled at Julian like he was seeing a stranger. "Second," Claire continued, "while still legally married to Nancy, Julian became engaged to Ms. Hannah Reeves, currently standing here, with the promise of marriage to secure a portion of the Holloway inheritance. This constitutes marital fraud and indicates an attempt to exploit the estate." Hannah said nothing. She simply stepped forward, opened the velvet box, and placed the ring Julian gave her next to mine. The two were identical. The room froze. Julian looked around, no escape in sight. "You don't understand," he turned to me. "Nancy, why are you doing this? We can talk. You didn't have to." "Don't," I cut him off, my eyes like steel. "You were involved with 3 women at the same time. You took money from me, from Hannah, from Lisa, and now you're trying to drag your family's estate into this scam? I won't stay silent anymore." Patricia collapsed back into her seat, trembling. Charles lowered his head, saying nothing. Julian took a step back, his voice cracking. "You can't just destroy everything like this." "No," I said, turning away from the table. "You destroyed everything. I just turned on the lights." As soon as we left the restaurant that night, Hannah and I got into Claire's car, waiting across the street. She didn't say much, just handed me a thick envelope and nodded. "I submitted all the documents to the authorities at 8 p.m., just as planned," she said. "We won't have to wait long." Not even 15 minutes later, as our car turned the corner, I saw red and blue lights reflecting off the restaurant's stone walls. 2 police cruisers parked at the entrance. I didn't look back. I just closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and let my body finally relax for the first time in months. Julian was arrested right at the dinner table. According to Claire the next morning, the police arrived with a warrant for 3 charges: financial fraud, unlawful use of identity for obtaining loans, and marital deception. The evidence was undeniable, from fake bank documents and forged signatures to suspicious transfers to offshore accounts. Through Adam's investigation, a few internal emails from Julian's company revealed that he had been crafting a fake financial profile to legitimize his claim to the family inheritance, contingent on a legal and outwardly stable marriage. But his real marriage, to me, was exactly what brought everything down. 3 days later, Julian's bank accounts were frozen. The court issued an emergency injunction to seize the Holloway family's assets after discovering years of hidden debts, funneled through shell companies and high-risk credit maneuvers. Patricia Holloway appeared in the press the very next morning, trying to deny involvement and placing all the blame on her son. But journalists quickly uncovered documents she had signed. Shady paperwork, including the very trust agreement they tried to get me to sign during that infamous dinner. Charles, the man who had always worn a cold, commanding mask, vanished from public view, offering no statements. All anyone knew was that he sold their multi-million-dollar yacht and temporarily transferred ownership of the Newport estate to a law firm, likely as legal collateral. And me? I returned to my apartment in Denver, still the same penthouse, still the same glass window looking out to the mountains. But this time, I wasn't alone. Hannah came by after Julian's first hearing. We sat at the small kitchen bar, opened 2 bottles of sparkling water, and baked frozen pizza. A simple meal, but oddly comforting. She laughed as she recalled the moment Julian was cuffed. "He looked at me like I'd stabbed him in the back," Hannah said. But really, he just didn't know I'd finally learned to protect myself. I nodded. I get it. He made us believe it was all about love, about the future. But really, his future was just a new wallet to drain. We clinked our glasses. No fireworks, no grand celebration. Just two women who had been lied to, sitting in warm light, giving themselves a well-earned moment of peace after the storm. A message came in from Claire right after. Julian will remain in custody pending trial. No bail granted. The court has also approved a freeze on his assets until the investigation concludes. I set my phone down, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled. For once, a genuine sigh of relief. I thought of Lisa, the first woman Julian deceived. She had sent a thank you email when she found out we exposed the truth. I never met her in person, but I knew she was reclaiming what was rightfully hers, both financially and emotionally. Things didn't go back to how they were, and I didn't want them to. I had lost 2 years of my life to someone who didn't deserve them. But what I regained, my self-respect, my dignity, and my voice, was worth more than anything. Hannah smiled as she refilled our glasses. Some people say revenge isn't worth it, she said. I looked at her, eyes lit, a calm smile on my lips. I don't think so. From my own story, I realized that sometimes the person who hurts you most is the one you trusted the most. But instead of letting the pain crush me, I chose to face it, expose the truth, and reclaim control of my life. Betrayal is a fall, but if you rise the right way, you'll be stronger than ever. Revenge isn't about rage. It's about showing that I'm not someone who can be controlled, and I will never be silent. What do you think about Nancy's story and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss any emotional family stories and meaningful life lessons.